testosterone. She challenged these regulations at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CSA, arguing that they are unlawfully discriminating against some female athletes on the basis of a natural characteristic of unusual natural genetic trait, even if that trait confers an advantage over fellow female athletes who do not have a trait. Subsequently, the regulations were suspended by CSA, and Ms. Chen was allowed to compete again, while the IAAF was instructed to produce a scientific evidence that will support their thesis of causality between female testosterone levels and their performance, and report back in 2 years, and that was in 2017. Instead of bringing compelling evidence as per the directive of the court, the IAAF instead introduced new hyperandrogenism regulations in 2018, which amplified the previous 2011 regulations. In terms of these new regulations, I quote, a female with hyperandrogenism who is recognized as a female in law shall be eligible to compete in women competitions in athletics provided that she has androgen level below that of a male. Specifically, their natural levels of testosterone must be below 5 nanomoles per liter, unquote. Moreover, the regulations are only applicable to 400 meters to mile, including 400-meter hurdle races, 800-meter and 1,500 meter. The categories wherein coincidentally Caster Semenya participates and generally dominates. The logic as to why regulations were restricted to these categories is still unclear, thus compelling us as a country to suspect they are targeted to our very own daughter of the soil, who is the reigning world champion in the 400 meters and 800-meter track. These regulations have drawn criticism from organizations and eminent individuals in various sectors, including human rights, medical science, sport, and sport law, both here and abroad. The critics have elevated a point that the regulations are discriminatory and violate fundamental and international human rights, including a right to physical and bodily integrity, the right to freedom from torture, and other cruel, inhuman, and/or degrading treatment and harmful practices. As a South African government, we have added our voice in condemnation of these regulations, mainly as a matter of principle as a country that respects and promotes human rights, and also in support of an application lodged by Athletics South Africa, Xasa, at the Court of Arbitration challenging these regulations because they appear to be specifically targeting Caster Semenya. Through our Department of Sport and Recreation, we have established a high-level panel consisting of the medical and legal work streams, respectively. This panel consists of experts in both medical and legal fraternities who constitute the respective work streams. There's a third work stream constituted by the departmental personnel, and its mandate is to raise public awareness and mobilize public support on the discriminatory nature of these regulations. Work in all these streams has commenced, and the high-level panel have prepared a formidable case based on legal and medical data collected, and the legal team will appear before the Court of Arbitration to present the case in support of the case lodged by both Athletics South Africa and Mr. Caster Semenya's lawyers. The third government stream has also started with its work, which primarily focuses on mobilization of public and international support for Athletics South Africa and Caster Semenya cases, and condemnation of the regulations, both their letter and spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, sporting fraternity, international human rights platforms, and human rights advocates, it is important to take a moment to reflect on what these regulations truly mean for the little girl growing up in an African village with dreams of becoming a top sports woman. These regulations have the potential to deprive the world from seeing and experiencing the natural superiority of future athletes to come from our African soils. Ms. Semenya put it so well when he said, as I quote, "It's not about me anymore. It's about African girls who come from the rural areas who do not believe that they can do this," unquote. It is for this reason that we honor and declare the greatness of Caster Semenya. I must thank the sporting community who have raised their hands in support, which includes our federations, as they are also present here today. And as government, we urge you, members of the media, to be the voice of the people, to partner with us in this campaign of declaring that #naturally superior. The campaign will target various sectors of local and global community, and through proper channels will engage human rights organizations and eminent persons locally and internationally in an effort to ensure that the whole world condemn these regulations as a gross violation of human rights. The world once declared apartheid as a crime against human rights. We once more call upon people of the world to stand with us as we fight what we believe is a gross violation of human rights. As a girl from Limpopo, Caster continue teaching us that we can overcome adversity, that role models can come in the least expected of places, that through resilience you can be a beacon of hope. I want to borrow the words of another great athlete who has faced similar challenges in her career, Ms. Serena Williams, who said, I quote, "Think of all the girls who could become top athletes but quit sport because they are afraid of having too many defined muscles and being made fun of or called unattractive," unquote. We therefore encourage every individual, every organization, and every sector that is intolerant of discrimination, violation of human rights, particularly of women, and injustice, to join and add their voice to this movement that condemns this discrimination, these discriminatory IAAF regulations, which in their nature seek to unfairly exclude other sections of society from competing in sport. And to Caster, please remember Dada Mandela when he said, I quote, "The greatest glory in living lies not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall." We have, unquote, "We have no doubt that in no time, Caster will continue and will be our rising star, raising our flag in glory as she has done in collecting many of the medals." With this mobilization campaign of Naturally Superior, we honor and declare the greatness of women. We pronounce that let women have the freedom to be women in our sporting society. We pronouncing that let women have the right to participate in this society's sporting platforms, which does not judge their gender. Let women's sporting performance and resultant greatness not be questioned not doubted. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, by the rising of hands, just for those who've got questions, just say where you come from, and then we can take it from there. If I can just say that. I will take it, it's clear.
Very clear.
No questions. Okay, that's beautiful. Okay. Charles, you've got a count. Professor? Okay. Okay, let's take the first round of hands.
Charles Baloy from Media 24, Daily Sun. Honorable Minister, what was your initial reaction when this statement or this report were released? Because this is now a repetition. It dies off, it repeats itself, dies off, repeats itself, and in a way it's disturbing Caster Semenya's planning, scheduling, and it keeps on coming and confusing the public as a whole. And are you going to be traveling to Switzerland to support him there physically?
Thank you very much. Professor?
Thank you, Minister. Villa from SABC. Maybe just to enlighten us again in terms of the government support, what kind of support is government providing to the organization, of course, which is ASA, because I remember that previously there was a promise, especially around the legal team.
That's fine. Let me give the podium.
All right. Thank you very much, Charles. Indeed, if you trace the background of events as they unfolded, the regulations were supposed to be effected from the 1st of November. And when we received that, we acted and interacted with our federations. And Athletics South Africa, which is the lead federation when it comes to athletics in South Africa, had to take the lead to make sure that it carries the aspirations of South Africa and South African athletes by putting a case before the Court of Arbitration. And that in itself has what today we see that it is the regulations could not be effected on the 1st of November because we had already presented the case. So over the process, supporting all those efforts, we had to support them in pulling together even teams so that we can have a case put together. And that in itself has assisted much more to also clarify to us and also see to what extent we can support, because you would have had on the one side Caster Semenya and her legal team already working on the matter, but the process up to now has seen how those teams are working together and putting matters before the Court of Arbitration, as is the case would be taking off on Monday, the 18th. Unfortunately, in terms of the delay, in terms of actually launching the campaign, the Court of Arbitration has, until only last week, where they loaded the matter in their court roll, so that we can know the dates and therefore can come to this stage that we are in. But as I indicated already in the briefing earlier, our streams have been working since the time, but we wanted to communicate so that South Africans and the world can be part of also monitoring the actual process before the Court of Arbitration as it would start. So our teams are already there. Others will be leaving late on Saturday. I hope to join them sometime during the course of the case as well up there in Switzerland. the reason why we then have this campaign, and already our federations, as they are represented here, we have Banyana represented, we have our netball represented, cricket, various of our federations. We have also bought in, we have supported the campaign. So the campaign has been going on. We also have seen some media houses also running the campaign. I was earlier listening to Shuni also into the campaign. So it has been moving, which is why perhaps maybe those members of the media who, if they think there had been any other confusing statement, it is time that they get any clarification from here today, because we would want you to partner with us moving forward. The government support into it value has been in several ways, because we started immediately interacting with our federations to make sure that we can be able to pull together teams that would really get down, conduct research, pull everybody that we think is critical, including your Professor Cornelius, and also, linking up with countries that have had, similar occurrences where they had to get in, stand up for their countries, and learn some of that information as part of putting together. But critical to it would have been resourcing this kind of activity, building up to when the case is starting on Monday, which required therefore resourcing. So maybe Digi can talk to the actual figures when it comes to that. But in terms of it, you'll see from the side of your Caster Semenya team, we have a footprint there in terms of supporting to make sure that they are able to put together their case from the angle that they are putting it. And ASA is also assisted to be able to put the case as it reflects in terms of your pulling together on the side of representing athletes in general, and to what extent it can impact on future athletes, not just as it would impact when it gets to be implemented now. So we've been providing that form of support. So even when we had this last minute indication of the dates of the sitting of the Court of Arbitration, the department itself was busy even when it comes to facilitation of visas for the team to go there, assisting them even on matters of where the base for the team has to be and all of that. So various forms of support have been worked out. We continue because we believe that, it's not just about Athletics South Africa or Caster Semenya. It is also about the country rallying behind its own athletes who need to be given opportunity to participate in the whole world, not just in South Africa.
Minister has covered 90% of that, and essentially the government has been at this core center of leading the whole response to these regulations. And we say so primarily because from word go, as the minister pointed out, government immediately responded by instituting a response team, and the minister appointed a high-level panel which is chaired by government, and that includes all parties to this response, including Caster's legal representatives and Athletics South Africa and its legal representation, and we also roped in a number of experts. As Minister indicated, there are 3 work streams which are both supported and funded and by government. The first one was on the medical side of things, and we needed South African experts as well as experts from other parts of the world to be able to look into the matters that IAAF were relying upon. And we also had to undertake some more research, and we also had to do literature review of all what was available, and all that was funded by government. This medical experts and that work stream was funded by government. The second work stream, which is the legal one, for the lawyers to prepare the case. Caster has her own own legal team that she worked with even before, when this matter once raised its ugly head. So that law firm was also engaged by her again this time around. But we also stepped in there, as the minister indicates, and we supported her in that regard in terms of the legal fees. We are also supporting Athletics South Africa in terms of paying their legal fees, as well as all other related aspects, including travel to the case and all these related matters there too. So we are really at the center of this, and we are looking at ensuring that it does succeed. You want the actual figures? I would not be able to drop them top of the head, but I can assure you that it's a worthy fight that must be fought. And the indication this morning with the minister is quite clear that I'm sure all of you know that many people are afraid of touching U.S. citizens all over the world, because they know that you touch them, the U.S. government is coming for you. And even in this case, if we do not undertake this matter and deal with it, one day we know that the world will know to trample on the rights of all South Africans everywhere else. And we will, in all facets of life, stand firm behind our citizens. After all, that's why a government exists, to serve its own citizens. And where the human rights of one of our own are being trampled upon, we will certainly have to enter the fray and act. And I think that this case represents exactly that spirit for us, and it's a worthy fight to pursue.
Thank you very much, DG. Let's have follow-up questions. So the set of students, okay.
Do you think that Caster Semenya is being targeted because she's a woman? In other words, do you think that a man would have to face the same issues? And secondly, do you think she's targeted because she's... Should I start again? Should I start again? Yeah. Fine. My name is Beatrice Dupuy. I work for the AFP News Agency. Do you think that Caster Semenya is being targeted because she's a woman? In other words, do you think that a man would face the same issues? Secondly, do you think that Caster Semenya is being targeted because she's a black athlete? Do you think the same thing would happen with a white athlete? Thank you.
Okay. Number 2. Yes, please.
Minister Thokozile from Vision View Sports Radio. The statement here talks about the panel that consists of experts from medical and legal fraternities. I want to know if maybe that is a structure that has been put together for this particular case, or is it going to be working with this sports and recreation ministry going forward? And if that is the case, what is the end goal in as far as that is concerned? Now, what do you want? Obviously, you want to get support and mobilize public support for Caster, but going forward, is there a bigger picture in as far as this panel is concerned?
Good day, everyone. My name is Johnny Sai. I'm with African News Agency, Victoria. Just to inquire, Minister, my question is similar to the first colleague. Do you think racism is at the center of this row? There are many people on social media who allege that this is a racial incident. As government, what's your stance, and do you think there is racism against Caster? Thank you.
Good morning, Minister. One assumes that the trouble that the ministry is going through has got the full backing of the president of the country. Is that true?
President of
The country. Is it true?
Is that it?
Is it true?
Thank you very much once more. Looking into the categories that have been targeted and those for the future that are targeted, for us, we could see that at the moment, Caster is directly impacted upon and would be impacted even when it comes to what she has indicated would be participating in the coming in the upcoming upcoming Olympic. So that is why we are able to also put that face to say, you know, hands off our Caster. But critical to this is the fact that it is not all it is not all the areas where women are participating. It's just a select few, and if you look at them, it is also, you know, very clear that the kind and nature of the participants would have been having some advantage of the backgrounds where they come from. If you also are looking at the African girls who happen to participate in some of the tracks, you know, associate that as well with where they come from, whether they would have become immigrants in a particular country, but the natural environment where they come from would also have assisted them to have such resilience. So for us, the fact that it is not picking up men, we are saying it is discriminating, it is sexist in its nature. So it's not like a situation or regulations that are introduced on the grounds of fairness. So that is where we are querying, so that, you know, if you talk participants, talk all of them, talk all your categories, and then would not have picked up any of the fight that we are picking. At the moment, nothing is about men, whether they would have an advantage in the other categories of where they are participating, whether they would have whatever that you would say, it's whatever testosterone levels and all of that. Nothing is said about it, and therefore that is where it continues to have a query on us to say, if you are an international federation, you're supposed to be subscribing to fairness and also looking into human rights issues. You're not supposed to discriminate people who participate. Black men, if then it is black men or black women would fight, because that in itself would be discrimination. In terms of the panel and the vision, specifically because these are experts in certain of the field, and some of them it's people who have undertaken cases of this nature representing their countries, and who would have also some critical medical expertise when it comes to the expertise that is required, but also for those who deal with the issues of human rights. You're talking expert who would have dealt with some of the matters as they relate to sport, not just across. So this is just a panel for this particular case. They're working on it. Should there be other cases, as and when matters would be considered as such. So as of now, they would be participating there, and we are, as they put it, cautiously optimistic that they are really going to present our case, which is, we think South Africa is standing up for countries of the world. It is taking the lead to say not about our South African athletes, but the world cannot today turn back to disrespect human rights. Yes, for us, Johnny, it's a subtle racial incident that we are observing as part of this. Much as in terms of our streams and the representation there, we're not putting it outwardly, but it is embedded within what the whole discrimination that we see, the whole sexism that we see, the whole, picking up of certain of the categories. And if you look and follow to say who are the predominant groups that are participating there, and therefore we feel that then it means they are targeted. The last question in terms of the president's support, I represent government as part of sport. Yes, the president supports, because this is part of the agenda that we are driving to make sure that we support women. Maybe you've also have heard even yesterday and in the State of the Nation, the agenda of government to make sure that issues of gender and issues of fighting gender-based violence and discrimination are part of the core agenda that the president is driving. So any attempt to make sure that we stand and promote women, the president supports.
Okay, thank you very much. I think this is the last tour because it's women are all even trying. So it will be yourself, and then Charles, you've got a follow-up. Then you're going to close.
Good morning, Minister. This is Sibyl from KFM. What I would like to know is that, as Charles was saying earlier, the IAAF keeps on bringing this issue over and over again, trying to address it differently. What I would like to know is, what are the plans, or are there plans from the department should CAS rule against Caster?
Okay, Charles, follow up.
Charles here again from Sunday Lisa. Minister, are there any efforts made to make sure that this campaign reaches the village where Caster is from? I've been there a couple of times, so that the people can know that the government is on their side and they are fighting a battle. And then in this campaign that is formally been launched today, are we going to see things on the billboard, adverts on radio, TV, in the newspapers, tracing the hands of our girls?
I think just adding on to what Charles has said, so what are you calling the public to do? What is it actually going to look like? But also, we've been trying to get hold of Caster recently, and we haven't been able to. Just from the minister. Have you been able to speak to her, and in what sort of mood is she in? Can you give us anything from her in terms of what she's going through at the moment?
Minister?
All right, thank you very much. I will allow the DG to get into the details of the plans moving forward and the nature of the campaign and who are we also targeting and linking up. But I'm sure later you'll also be able to talk to the federations as they are here in terms of the work that has happened already to target federations and also looking into what communities would be doing moving forward. But at the moment, as we are saying, looking into what IWAF has been doing, we think they have been so mischievous in how they have been continuously introducing these regulations. So they'll just throw it and countries, as they would be affected, they would come in. So now we've linked up even with those countries that were affected before and pulled in experts from those countries themselves, which has assisted us in putting up our case so that we can track even from what was presented before what were the challenges that made them to retract such, because we believe they have not done any work that is different. They just brought them back at another point in time, and such athletes from those countries then managed to participate until perhaps they would have ended their time in terms of participation. So here we have a situation where we think it would bar one of our own at the moment, but at the same time, entrants that would also would have been following behind Caster as part of our athletes in participating in these tracks would be affected if we can leave it. We are determined to fight. We are, not only focusing on South Africa and just civil society within South Africa on top of every of your key role players in sport, but we are also mobilizing in the whole world. Maybe in terms of detail, DJ would indicate who already that we are working with in terms of the third stream, that is the department's one. Shoni, when we started putting together all this campaign, and Caster was busy still participating in several of the other programs that she was in. We didn't really want her to come in and be, interrupted in such. And our interaction with her was to say, Caster, let this not be your fight. Let this be the nation's fight behind you. Unfortunately, your face will continue to reflect. So even when we talk the campaign and when we launch the campaign, we cannot avoid to say Caster Semenya, because you are directly affected at the moment. So that is why then when we interacted, and we have been interacting even with the team and the Caster's team, we have been very clear. It's not, we don't want to directly make her to be part of, communicating and all of that. She has made a statement, and we have a team of hers, representing her there. We could not pull together or integrate the teams. We made them to represent the different aspects, but convergence is one, so that we are able to separate the two. And in the course of the actual court process as it would start on Monday. Maybe even with members of the media, I would urge you not to really ask her to make comments, because it can jeopardize on some of what they are presenting there as the case, because it would be like we are running another case here. Definitely it's going to connect anything that we are doing. So would urge you to just allow her, and we're urging you to be part of us getting some of the details. They would be briefing us in terms of the processes. They will share with you such information for communication, sharing with South Africans what is happening, but just also to protect and allow her to prepare for her upcoming events, and also be behind her for her to get more medals moving forward. So I'll allow, therefore, the DG to get in. And in terms of the plan that the DG will be outlining, indeed, there will be community platforms. Look into the specific one as you are asking in terms of Caster's village, but Caster is also bigger than that village. Is now a South African, so in anything and everything in terms of the campaign that will be running, the campaign as it would be happening in some of the major events or sporting activities that are happening in the country, that the messages would be going on. Like when Banyana was playing in Cape Town, there was a message around it. So she's bigger than the village, but should the village and activities come up as part of the campaign, definitely we would go, because we would be able to also go to the villages looking for young people who have Caster as a beacon of hope, continue to support, because we want those role models. We want them to succeed. We want them not to be discouraged by any, because that is why we are here launching this campaign. If you can get into the plans.
Thank you, Minister. Okay, let me start. We are not planning for failure, and so we are not planning for a loss. We are planning to win, because the idea of losing the case is just too ghastly to contemplate. And for us, we are doing, and that's why we are pulling all stops to make sure that we win. I think we cannot afford a loss, and because the loss will be catastrophic. There will be no alternative plan in case of a loss, because then it means that we have hit the end of the road, and she may not participate in those specific subcodes of athletics, and which is simply what we can't allow. So it is on that basis that we are planning, and all our plans are geared towards winning. I think we must clear that issue quite well. Let me now address the issues Cloney is raising, the issue of the content of the campaign. The campaign tagline is naturally superior, and the campaign itself, I think we must make a clear distinction. It is not a campaign of Caster Semenya. It's a campaign to oppose the unfair regulations of the IAAF. In Caster, we have a human face and a human victim of these regulations. And therefore, all our sub taglines and all our payoff lines and everything intertwine this understanding and the platform on which the campaign is built. Now, let me say from the onset that the campaign is a call to the public, both here in South Africa and also elsewhere in the world, to show their support for Caster, the victim, but to also act against the injustice that is being presented by these regulations. And that we are saying as a platform and content of the campaign to say that all human rights loving people, all social activists, ordinary citizens, athletes, everybody involved and interested parties and stakeholders, raise your hands and act. And I think it's important to quote Martin Luther King when he says that in the final end, we will not remember the noises and words of our enemies, but we will remember the silence of our friends in times of need. And with those words, it summarizes why we do international mobilization of everybody, that all our friends and all human rights advocates don't sit idle, because as you know, injustices and wrong things happen when good men and women sit idle, and that's when you see that evil triumphs. And for that reason, that's why we are calling on the public to actually act. How do they act? We have afforded a number of response messaging around this. First, we will put up an online petition, which we hope during the course of the case we will also present that the lawyers will also put forward before CAS the international opposition to the IAAF's regulations and force that court to consider taking judicial notice on the international response. Secondly, we are putting campaign ambassadors who will help in spreading the message. What Minister says about the silence of Caster is quite important. The rules of CAS requires that the party before court do not comment on the merits of the case. Otherwise, you jeopardize your own case. You get it thrown out even before the logical conclusion by simply misbehaving. So from that point of view, Caster and her legal team, as well as Athletics South Africa and their legal team, are largely constrained. We have a representative of athletics here today, but he can't even sit here with us because the rules will not allow. CAS will simply not agree that they are a party to a matter before it, and that they sign up to those rules when they sign up to the arbitration process and proceedings. And for that reason, we government are not a party before that case. And sorry, it is for that reason that we can pronounce. And the minister is the face of the campaign and not Caster. The minister is the communicator key in as far as spreading the messages around the response of South Africa to these regulations. And the campaign ambassadors will also serve to support the minister. They'll be made up of people from different persuasions. They would start speaking in due course. We will inform you duly and we'll share with you the campaign materials and every other thing that you would require and the information brochure on the campaign, so that the key messaging, you have it with yourselves and you have the ambassadors and their contact details that you can speak to. Again, in this regard, we are also lobbying international sports stars to tweet, to issue statements, to speak out on this. I'm sure you know that Mr. LeBron James in the US had subsequently responded, flew to see Caster run, went to the dressing room with her and had a pep chat, also tweeted loudly his opposition to the regulations and expressed his support for Caster. We're asking that everyone else, the most notable athletes of the world, do the same. And we have also begun mobilizing the athletics federations other than Athletics South Africa right across the world. I'm sure you are familiar that the Canadian Athletics Association has been the first to issue a statement condemning the regulations. Now you know that the Council of Ministers of Sport in the SADC region, the African Union Sports Council Region 5, after duly receiving the address of the minister, all of them voted in favor of a resolution to oppose the regulations. You are now familiar that we have approached the continental body governing sports in our continent to also do the same. Our Deputy Minister sits on UNESCO and chairs the Sport for Peace and Development Working Group. All those countries serving on that will also be approached to do the same and condemn the regulations. We are also, through our diplomatic channels, we have already written to DERCO, and we are asking all ambassadors of South Africa right across the world to lobby those countries to also support. And we are also doing trade-offs in terms of voting patterns and everything with many countries to ensure that we receive the necessary support. You are familiar with the fact that now the 3 UN rapporteurs have issued a letter to the president of the IAAF condemning the regulations and asking key pertinent issues of ethics, which some of them the minister has duly covered in a statement. And we can share with you all of that. In fact, when we do share with you the information packs, we will give you also this type of correspondences and the statements that have already been issued right out. Again, we are calling for South Africans to participate in a publicity program, and our campaign will be largely driven through the social media platforms as well as mainstream media. And to answer you directly, there will be no billboards. We prefer more publicity than advertisements. And we think that this is a good cause that everybody and all South Africans needs to respond to. And to that extent, we will not have all the money. Next year we are going to Tokyo. We need to spend all money in preparing Team South Africa instead of buying adverts. And to that extent, we call upon South Africans to be patriotic in the hour of need and to respond adequately and support what we are putting forth. And to that extent, we will work closely with media. Report in your news and report it as part of your stories than as adverts. I think that's the message and the key understanding. We will do interviews. We will avail the minister and all the ambassadors to be able to be available to do all of that. With local federations as well, Minister has spoken about this. We are asking them that before all major matches here in the Republic, where we have control over the processes, that the captains of national teams, all of them across all codes, read messages of support and condemnation to the unfairness of the regulations. We have now written to all federations and we wish to compel, and please, this is not interference by the minister, we wish to compel all national teams to wear black armbands when they play here at home. When they play overseas, we really don't have control over the arrangements of the matches, and only where those countries are also eager and they have expressed their support for what we are doing will we also ask them that our teams are allowed to play in those black armbands. But in all incoming tours, which we are responsible for, we will compel our teams to play in black armbands to show solidarity with the injustice that is happening. And so I can go on and on about the more content about what we are doing, but I've just given you the synopsis of both the domestic mobilization and international mobilization work we have been busy with, and we have put up a huge response as government, and we have remembered in this hour of need our friends to come forth and support us to fight basically against a bully that thinks that it can go over women's rights that easily. Minister, can I make one important point relating to this matter? Look, the IAAF's own reliance, the study they rely on, has listed this part. I think all of you media know about it. When it started, you reported about it. But it listed 400 meters, 400 meter hurdles, 800 meters, hammer throw, and pole vault. Now, if the experts of the IAAF or the study the IAAF relies on says that these are the events in which an athlete with hyperandrogenism is likely to perform better because of the condition, or that she has higher levels of testosterone, then certainly when they issue regulations, the regulations must cover these events, all of them, because allegedly those are the events in which if you have higher levels of testosterone as a female, you have an unfair advantage over your competitors. But when you look at the regulations of the IAAF, when they are now issued, they cherry pick the events that apparently, as an athlete, you are supposed to be performing better. They limit them to 400 meters, 400-meter hurdles, 800 meters, and then they go on to do something that really is unthinkable. Their own study says nothing about 1,500 meters. But Caster had already expressed her interest in running middle distances, and she had already said after her Diamond League victory, and she was interviewed, and she said she's now targeting 1,500 meters. And somehow, miraculously, the IAAF then include 1,500 meters into the races that supposedly you are supposed to be better, or your performance enhanced by higher levels of testosterone in your body. Now, with that, we are saying that we think that it is targeted at her, and that's why only the distances that she runs or potentially can run are being targeted. And is it racism, Minister, is correct? We believe it's subtle racism because these distances are dominated by African athletes. They have always been dominated by them. They are dominated by South Americans and often even Asians. But you now move and you leave out hammer throw, you leave out pole vault, which supposedly it has been said that you benefit. Why? We suspect that because none of the African athletes dominate in any of that, and European athletes are quite dominant in those codes. And the issue where we say is discriminatory against women, honestly. So a man who has higher levels of estrogen and lower levels of testosterone, then he is at an unfair advantage of competing with other men. Why do the regulations not say that therefore he must compete with women? And why is it only about women athletes? Why is it that a woman athlete who is said to be having high levels of testosterone has to compete with men, whereas a man with lower levels of testosterone and higher levels of estrogen somehow is not allowed to compete with women? Where is fairness gender-wise there? So yes, she's been targeted because she's a woman. Had she been a man, we doubt that that would be the case. And we can draw lessons from other international federations on this matter, and we can have a debate the whole day, and we can give you examples of where women have been targeted before, and selectively so. And often than not, subtle racism is there. So the fact that the world has moved on doesn't mean that racists are all dead. So we truly believe that the modern day racism is not overt, it's quite subtle. And we have to challenge all the manifestations of that racism.
Thank you very much, Minister Kiji. Colleagues, that's about the end of it. We'll actually allow one-on-ones, those who want, as well as the federations that are in support are here, so you can also engage on them. Thank you very much, Minister, DM. The lunch will be served and told by Migi. Upstairs. Okay. Migi will then direct us to the lunch. That's about the end of it. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. What does we want us to do?
For the of sport. Permutation. Yes.
I'm thinking what they want us to do.
He wanted the one-on-one stuff.
Oh, yeah.